It's The List and your boy with Jimmy Van and Sean Ross Sapp.
All right, you guys are live.
What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp, managing editor of Fightful.com here. It is September 20th. List and your boy, number 38. I'm joined by Jimmy Van, also of Fightful.com. I'm trying to get as much dead air in here as possible. Because before we went on the air, Jimmy told me how much he hates it.
Yeah, that's great. Remember the long pauses you used to do?
I did.
You don't do those as much anymore.
No, man. I'm supplemented up. It was, hey, man, I work a lot, so I get a little exhausted, and I would have to process my thoughts. I don't even think about what I say anymore. Right. Lucky you.
Did you ever?
I mean, I did then.
Well, you've come a long way. I think you're doing a good job. Tell me first about Florida. How was that?
It was an experience. I enjoyed it.
Yeah?
I'm not going to put it above Toronto in my favorite cities list or anything, but it was a lot of fun. I got to go to the NXT tapings.
Yes, that's right.
That was cool.
Right.
As I told Joe, that was cool because that made the trip tax deductible, so that's nice. Got to go to Universal the next day. Unfortunately, that was not tax deductible. Really wish that it was. But that was a very, very good experience. My wife has wanted to go to Universal forever. Took her to a Titanic museum because she's a Titanic buff.
That's cool.
Hogan's Beach Shop. We did the zombie laser tag type of thing. That was cool. We saw some friends there. Played some pirate-themed mini golf. It was a good time.
It's all right.
I had fun.
Did you, you told me something about how you took a shit at Universal?
I did.
Nigel, can you believe? So we got to tell people that we have Nigel a little bit mic'd up today, a little bit better than normal. Sean actually texted me to say he was taking a shit at Universal.
I didn't text you to say that.
He did. He did.
I did text Matt Riddle to tell him that. Let me read the text because I had talked to Matt on Thursday, and I didn't reply to him until Friday. I didn't have any free time.
You pulled a Riddle on Riddle.
I did.
Wow.
I guess you could call me the Riddler.
The Riddler, yeah.
So I replied, and I just replied to him. He goes, "Nice delayed response, Sean." And I said, "Sorry, I'm taking a dump ski at Universal Studios, bro." To which he replied, "You are a genuine piece of trash."
I can't believe that Matt Riddle actually got on you for being late to respond. How ironic is that, Nigel?
That's the way it works, man.
Wow.
That's the way it works. But I had a good time. Those NXT tapings were really good. About an hour and a half too long for me. Right. But, I mean, they ain't doing it for me.
Right.
They're doing it for them. A lot of good stuff on that show. That I encourage everybody to watch the Andrade Cien Almas versus Johnny Gargano match because it's one of the best matches I've seen this year. It was outstanding.
Wow. And I saw your Kairi Sane video clip on YouTube that you put up. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm putting up a lot of clips. There are some that I'm waiting to put up because I don't want WWE to crawl up our ass about spoiling their show. So.
Oh, did they do that?
On occasion, yeah.
Okay.
Like, I mean, they put a copyright claim on the Sanity video I have, but just because they wanted to monetize it instead of us.
Right.
Which I didn't even try to monetize it, but they flagged it, and because it had the Sanity song, they're like, well, you can keep it up, but we're going to monetize it. And I'm like, sure, whatever.
I think Nigel could do a very long podcast talking about how YouTube likes to retroactively discount our Trig Tent videos.
Yeah, pretty much.
In terms of not only views, but revenue both, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So that's what YouTube does.
Like a year or two ago, you could make a living on YouTube.
Sure.
It was a very possible thing, and there were a lot of people, a lot of wrestling podcasters who don't do what I do or what Alex do, as far as the content creation. They did straight videos and podcasts, and they made a good living, and YouTube kind of ripped that from them, and it's a bummer.
It is. Well, I'm glad you had fun in Florida. I want to do a little plug for the new giveaway that we're doing on the forum at Fightful.com. I have another one of these bad boys right here. Gonna give this away.
He's not dead yet.
He's not dead yet. No, he's alive and well. So we're gonna give that away. Why don't you explain how that contest works, Sean?
Yeah, I decided to make the contest just really, really simple now. I need to actually move the thread. I accidentally put it in the boxing open discussion, but I'll just send a link around. That way it's a little bit easier. Go to the boxing forum on Fightful.com. Basically, all you got to do is start a forum topic anywhere. Then you go back to that topic, the contest thread, and just write entered. That's all you got to do. Just start a thread about anything you're passionate about, anything you care about, anything you want to talk about. Start a new thread, then head over to that contest field over in the boxing forum. And yeah, it's pretty simple, and I think we'll get a good response out of that. But definitely check that out. We're looking to grow those forums. And we got a ton of stuff this weekend too, Jimmy, before we even get into the show. Ring of Honor, Death Before Dishonor. I'll be in the live coverage for that. I'll talk about that on Sunday after No Mercy, because we have a live podcast after our No Mercy coverage, and that's a loaded show. Friday night, UFC Japan. Saturday night, Bellator 183. And right after Bellator 183, myself and Showdown Joe are doing a show there. If you all missed myself and Carlos doing the Triple G Canelo show, check that out on FightfulPods.com. Carlos, man, I learned something about boxing. Like, you know, when you hired me, I was like, all right, I can hold my own with the boxing stuff, but I'll need somebody, and Carlos was that somebody, and I learned stuff from him every time I'm on a show with him, every time I read that newsletter he drops on Thursdays. So big shout-outs to Carlos Toro for really carrying that podcast, and that was one hell of a fight, too.
It was. We're going to get into that in a little bit. First, I want to talk about Bobby the Brain Heenan. And I know that you guys talked about him on the Post Raw podcast. You talked about him on the Post SmackDown podcast. And a lot of people have said a lot of things, and I don't want to take up a bunch of time kind of regurgitating what's already been said. I do want to say this. So first off, the Tampa Bay Times have reported that the cause of death was organ failure caused by the throat cancer that he battled for many years, like 15 years. The term greatest of all time gets thrown around a lot in pro wrestling and in pro sports, and it's overused to a degree, but I think when it comes to managing and wrestling, Bobby Heenan was the greatest of all time. I was thinking about, my favorite memories of Bobby the Brain Heenan, because, a lot of people have talked about the quick wit that he had and the gift of gab that he had and his color commentary work, and he had such great comedic timing and all of that, and that's all true. But another thing that made Heenan so great was that he could convey when he was angry. He could get the people to hate him and boo him when he wanted to. Did you notice that in WWE specifically, his guys were always at the top of the card? Always. Yeah. They were always challenging Hogan. They were always challenging the Warrior. He always had the top guys. And one of my favorite things about Bobby the Brain Heenan, do you remember the WrestleMania 3 press conference?
I don't.
So it's probably on the network, and if it is, you should look it up. So prior to WrestleMania 3, there was a press conference. I believe it was in Detroit. Andre, his balance wasn't that good by then. He was having a lot of back pain. So Andre was sitting at a table. Mean Gene Okerlund was hosting it, and Bobby Heenan was representing Andre. And there was a scene at the beginning of it where Heenan, because Heenan and Okerlund could play off each other really well, right? And at the very beginning of it, Heenan's standing next to Okerlund, and Mean Gene's trying to talk to Andre, and Andre is no-selling the whole thing. And Mean Gene is saying things like, to Bobby the Brain Heenan, like, why are these guys going to fight? Why does he want a title shot? Hulk Hogan looked up to him. And without even thinking about it, Heenan would go, that's because he's 7'5". Mm-hmm. Like, he just had one-liners like that. And then finally, when Okerlund was trying to get Andre to talk and trying to get him to talk, Heenan goes, do you want to take him out back and slap him around a little bit? And all of the reporters, which were mainstream reporters, just howled at Heenan's one-liners. He was the king of that stuff. But like I said, when he needed to get the crowd to boo him, he was great at that too. I don't know if you remember the Ken Patera story.
I don't.
Man, I'm teaching you stuff today, Sean. There was an angle. Nigel might find this interesting. There was a wrestler named Ken Patera. He was a U.S. Olympian, and in 1985 he went to jail for real for 2 years because he threw a rock through a McDonald's window after a live event. It was him and I forget the other guy. It might have been Mr. Saito. And they were hungry after a show, and the McDonald's was closing, and they got upset, and they threw rocks through the window, and the police were called, and there was a skirmish, and Ken Patera got 2 years for that. Prior to going to prison, he was part of Bobby Heenan's stable. When he was getting ready to come out of prison, or when he was out of prison, Vince McMahon decided this is a great story. We can turn Ken babyface, and we can have him feud with Heenan, and the story can be that Heenan screwed him, forgot about him, let him rot in prison. And there was a great segment they did on syndicated television where they had podiums and they were doing a little debate. And Patera was saying to Heenan, You were supposed to be, you promised me you were going to be with me. You promised me I was going to get a title shot. And Heenan goes, you want a belt? I'll give you a belt. And he took off his belt and started whipping Patera. And then Patera took the belt, wrapped it around his throat, Irish whipped him across, and then yanked on the belt. And Heenan, let me tell you something. For a guy that was probably 30 pounds overweight in the mid to late 80s, that guy could fly, right? He could bump like nobody's business, and he did a complete 180 when the belt was jerked back, and then the story was that he got a neck injury from that. He was, again, everybody's talked about his wit, and everybody's talked about the humor and the color commentary. That guy could get it done in the ring when he needed you to hate him and to boo him. So it's unfortunate. I mean, he struggled for a lot of years, and for a guy who had that gift of gab, the fact he lost his voice was unfortunate.
It's heartbreaking. So, my favorite story of Bobby Heenan is one I learned 15 minutes ago when John Morehouse published a story on Fightful.com. Jim Ross says, in some of those buildings, the older buildings, before they had automatic flushers, whatever you left would remain there until it was flushed manually. I don't know how Bobby Heenan did it from a nutritional standpoint, but he would save up to do number 2, and he always made a beeline to Vince McMahon's office. He'd go into Vince's private office in the arena. You've seen it before. I've been in it. All the protein bars and the shakes, it looks like a store, a health food store. Heenan would make a beeline straight for the can, sit down, do his business. Be careful that he didn't trip any triggers or nothing, so that everything was left there and would be remaining there, because normally old Vince would come in, run right to his bathroom, so that was greeting him. He did that all the time.
Ah, nice.
Ah, man.
Well, I consider him the greatest wrestling manager of all time, and to me, it's not even really close.
Yeah,
so.
It's hard for me to think, who's number 2? And you maybe a Cornette, maybe a Heyman, but I think about that, and to me, it's almost like John Jones versus everybody else in the UFC's light heavyweight division.
Yeah. Almost. I mean,
that's kind of what it is. There are a lot of really, really great ones.
Yeah.
But you look at it and you're like, man, there's no contest.
No.
Almost undefeated in that regard.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, you could have a lot of guys for second place. Like you said, you could have J.J. Dillon, Jimmy Hart would probably fit in that category. But there was only one Bobby the Brain Heenan. So my condolences to James Ellsworth. Yeah. My condolences to his family, but the guy had a hell of a life too, right? So
yeah.
I want to ask you, and I don't want you to go on a rant for 10 minutes, but I want to ask you...
Like you do every time you tell a story?
Oh, I don't do that. No, I get right to the point, Sean.
Yeah.
Why are you laughing, Nigel?
Hey.
Why are you laughing? So I want to ask you about this what culture situation, because you used to work there, and because they have a wrestling promotion. Apparently one of the guys that quit was the on-screen general manager for their promotion. So what's going on with what culture? Again, no 10-minute rant.
Now, I got to say, I'm very unfamiliar with these guys. I missed these guys by a year. But, I mean, the founder reached out to me, the one who I had issues with, and said, what's up? I didn't know you felt this way. And I'm like, well, you did. But we got to talking about it, and I was like, you're losing the faces of your website. And the reason I know that is because anytime I talk about it, people mention these people like, oh, that's who you worked for? And I'm like, no. They were something completely different a year after me. What Culture was basically the reverse Fox Sports. Have you seen how Fox Sports pivoted to video, and now they have 10% of the traffic they did 6 months ago?
Okay.
What Culture pivoted to video, and they shot through the roof. They had some really talented guys, and by all means, it looks like those 5 guys have moved on elsewhere. What that means for What Culture Pro Wrestling, I don't know. I worked there. I had a poor experience there. It's on a members-only podcast. It ain't tough to find, you guys. Go check that out. Myself and David Bixenspan talk about it at length, so I don't have to here. Go to the members-only show. But yeah, they're taking a big hit of that, because I mean, I never watched their videos, but I appreciated that those guys would cite some of our stories on occasion. They cited a Ronda Rousey story and stuff like that. So that's definitely a big hit for them. And a lot of times people will outgrow their situation and stuff like that. And I think that was the case for those 5 dudes. There is one guy on their site that I do watch and I'm a fan of, and that's Simon Miller. He's a very entertaining, funny dude. But other than that, I'm not that familiar with them other than seeing them, like on our sidebars and stuff on whenever their stuff would pop up when one of our videos are playing or a WWE video. But it's a big hit for them. But, there was a former employee who aired his grievances about the founder after that announcement, and I read it and I said, you know what, that's word for word pretty much my experience there. And I've worked for probably 8 or 9 different outlets, and that's the only one even resembling that type of situation I had.
Okay.
So yeah, that's really it. They had 5 important guys leave.
Right. And do you know if the wrestling promotion is going to remain, or you don't know about any of that stuff yet? Or
I would be shocked if it remained.
You would be.
I would be shocked.
Okay. Oh, that's too bad.
If it remained through 2018.
Right.
Like maybe they'll try to give it a go, but
right. Okay. Yeah. So I want to talk about the Triple G fight. Yes, this is boxing. This is not pro wrestling. But you know what? Sometimes real life brings about wrestling storyline content, Sean.
Hey, we're Fightful.com.
We are Fightful.com, but this is a wrestling podcast. But the reason I want to talk about this is because this is pro wrestling, this situation. And I think that people will find this interesting just because of what's going on. So boxing's popularity has declined over the last 20 years, let's say. Over the last few years, it's gotten worse. This year has been a rarity in that boxing's had some good nights. The Mayweather fight was obviously big. Last weekend was Gennady Golovkin against Canelo Alvarez. That was a big fight. The Joshua Klitschko fight was pretty big. So this was a rare year, but in general terms, boxing has declined in popularity. Last year, Oscar De La Hoya called it the worst year financially in the history of boxing for 2016. There's a lot of reasons that you can look at as to why that's the case. Why has boxing declined in popularity? And it's pretty simple in some cases. I mean, the inability to create new stars in North America, especially in the heavyweight division, that's a problem. The increase in popularity of MMA, that's a problem. A lot of fans, I think, have gotten accustomed to shorter fights and to definitive finishes as opposed to long 12-round boring fights, which you get a lot in boxing. So that's an issue. But one of the big issues that's been long-standing in boxing, and it reared its ugly head again last weekend, is corruption. And there's long been corruption in boxing. There has long been situations with greedy promoters that pay off the right people, or they get in the minds of the right people, and they kind of sway the decision to go one way over the other. I actually did a little bit of research this morning because I remembered a couple things that had happened in recent years. So Paulie Malignaggi, who's the same guy that had the little thing with McGregor where they sparred together and all that nonsense, in 2009, he fought in Houston, Texas against a guy named Juan Diaz. And Paulie Malignaggi's from New York. Going into that fight, before the fight even happened, Paulie Malignaggi said straight up on television, if I don't win a lopsided, dominant fight, if I don't either knock him out or if I don't completely dominate this fight, I'm going to lose on the judges' scorecards. Because the fighter's from Houston, the show's in Houston, and I'm going to lose. And what happened? He went out there and on the ringside media scorecards, he won the fight, a close fight. But he lost on the judges' scorecards, and there was one judge named Gail Van Hoy that scored at 118 to 110 for Diaz, meaning that they gave Malignaggi 2 rounds, even though the ringside media thought Malignaggi won a close fight. Malignaggi, in his post-fight interview, actually called out one of the judges by name and said that judge is a Golden Boy gopher. And he was referring to Golden Boy Promotions, which is Oscar De La Hoya's promotional company. 1 year earlier in 2008, there was another fight, again with Juan Diaz in Houston against a guy named Michael Katsidis. And that particular fight, Juan Diaz dominated the fight. It was a completely lopsided, fight in favor of Juan Diaz. And it turned out that he won a split decision. One of the judges actually gave the decision to the other guy, Katsidis. And Max Kellerman, who is one of the HBO analysts, he said straight up on television it's because of corruption. He said, how is it possible that a judge saw this fight for this guy? There's no chance that he won the fight, and it's pure corruption. And so last weekend, this Triple G fight against Canelo Alvarez, I watched the fight. I thought Triple G won. I thought it was a close fight. but I thought Triple G clearly won. And there was a judge named Adelaide Bird who scored at
notorious for bad decisions.
Right, and she scored.
Notorious.
She scored at 118 to 110 for Canelo. Canelo is Golden Boy's fighter, Oscar De La Hoya's fighter, and clearly politically, Golden Boy needed this fight. They needed Canelo to win the fight. They needed it to be close because they wanted a rematch, because they need some successes. They've got a lot of misses and they needed some wins. And again, it's come out. A lot of people are calling corruption. A guy named Teddy Atlas, who works for ESPN, has straight up said this is pure corruption. There's another guy named Brendan Schaub who does. He's a MMA fighter. He does podcasting. Before this fight even happened, he said the same thing Malignaggi said about his fight. He said if Triple G doesn't either knock Canelo out or or have a completely one-sided dominant performance, he's going to lose on the judges' scorecards. And that's exactly what happened. Or it ended up being a draw. But I thought Triple G clearly won the fight, and there's no way he lost 118 to 110. So what do you think of all this? I mean, this to me has been a long-standing problem in boxing, where these judges, they're either being paid off or they have a bias going into the fight for whatever reason. And it's been a long-standing problem, and I think it's hurt boxing's popularity. I think there have been too many disappointing efforts where fight fans get excited about a big fight, and then it ends up either a draw or the wrong guy wins or something political. What do you think about that?
So, well, first off, I think that boxing is looking a little more promising on the heavyweight front with Anthony Joshua and with Deontay Wilder. So that's promising. Klitschko leaving. Tyson Fury doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Right. That's a bummer. But just to address that. For Adelaide Bird, I think it's more about him being inept. Or her being inept. Yeah. Her being inept than anything, because for years she's had these terrible scorecards. And like I said on yesterday's Holy Smokes MMA podcast, which you guys can check out over at FightfulPods.com, it's like she took the crown, like CJ Ross when she was forced to step down. She took the crown off and said, "Here you go, my girl. It's yours now. It's all yours." And she opened up this land of bad judging to Adelaide Bird. Mm-hmm. And it's so funny if you ever see Adelaide Bird, like her glasses tell the story of her judging. It's real bad. So I don't know if it's her being inept or if it's corruption, but it was bad. It was egregiously bad, that scorecard. And it happens all the time. She's the one that gave the infamous Melvin Gillard 30-27 over Jamie Varner scorecard that is still referenced today. I think we need to start marketing 118 to 110 T-shirts.
It's not a bad idea. We're
gonna
do
Conor
that.
McGregor, like, just a shirt that says 111 punches landed with a shamrock on it.
Did he?
I said, no,
we should. Okay.
Why not?
Okay.
Might sell some of those.
Well, maybe you shouldn't be saying this stuff on the air publicly, Sean. So good job on that.
Well, you know.
But
I've already trademarked these ideas.
I can't help but think I think Vince McMahon should hit up Oscar De La Hoya, and he should try to book him as a heel authority figure on shows either in Texas, in New York, or in Vegas. Because I think we've seen enough, whether it be guys calling before the fight even happened, that because Golden Boy was involved, something was going to happen. Or Paulie Malignaggi years ago saying, I knew I had to win definitively because he's a Golden Boy fighter. It's happened so often for so many years that tells me, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I think there was something clearly corrupt that happened. And it's such a shame. It's such a shame because it's not like Canelo got killed. So even if he lost the fight, but it was a close, say, 115, 113 or something, how is that going to do any damage to Canelo? You know what I mean? They could still have a rematch. Yeah. But this judge felt the need. It's unfortunate, man. And this has been a constant thing in boxing for so many years. That
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the rematch. I think it'll be really great. The first fight was really great, too.
Yeah, but it's just unfortunate that this is the way they went to get to that rematch. Right?
Yeah.
That's the unfortunate thing. I mean, it seems to me like somebody in Golden Boy was kind of in the ear of one of these judges, like Adelaide Bird, and kind of let them know what they needed. And whatever, man. It's unfortunate. So, how's our time today?
Jimmy, come on, be natural.
No, man. I got to make sure.
When
I'm going to get into a big topic, Sean, I got to make sure I watch my time. That's called being professional, Sean.
I mean, we can talk about Impact changing their name again. I think that's good for 5 minutes.
You want to talk about that right now?
Why not? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Is it official?
I'm sure it'll be set. It'll be like Mid-South Wrestling by the end of this show. So who gives a damn?
Is it official?
Somebody had the balls to say to me, Jimmy, if this were WWE, you wouldn't even be making fun of this. I'm like, what are you talking about, man?
Oh,
like,
we absolutely would.
We absolutely would, but the fact is, WWE has changed their name as many times in the past 37 years as Impact has since January.
Yeah, I think that if Impact was my company, and if I made these decisions, and if Nigel didn't call me out on it, I'd be disappointed. Because it's been... Now, I will say one thing. So, what you're referring to is they're doing the Bound for Glory taping in Ottawa, coming up on November 5th. They're going to have 5 days of Impact tapings in the same building. I think it's the Aberdeen Pavilion in Ottawa. And the press release didn't make mention to Global Force. It only made mention to Impact Wrestling. One thing I noticed, but I don't know if it makes a difference or if it means anything. The GlobalForceWrestling.com website made no mention of any of this stuff. The ImpactWrestling.com website did. And again, I don't know if that means anything, but because the Global Force website wasn't updated that often, like not regularly, so it may mean nothing. But I don't know. I guess the other question I have about this whole thing is the last set of tapings, Jim Cornette was brought in as an authority figure.
Jesus Christ.
Right? It's pretty common knowledge that Jim Cornette cannot get into Canada, and he has no interest, I don't think, in getting into Canada anyway. Do you think that, once again, the powers that be at Anthem didn't know that when they booked Ottawa, or do you think they just didn't care?
They shouldn't care because he's not important to the show.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
It's their on-screen chaos with authority figures really reflects the backstage. It's like it's art imitating life is what it is.
Right.
That's what that is, because it's been a carousel backstage over who's in control and who's out of control and what the situation is. And they've had Pritchard, and they've had Dutch Mantell, and they've had Dixie Carter, and they've had Jeff Jarrett, and they've had Jim Cornette. How long until it's just Ed Nordholm?
Oh, it will be.
Booking himself on TV.
I think so. And I will say one thing about Ed Nordholm, even though he's been very inept in a lot of their decision making, and he's been fodder for a lot of our commentary here, and rightfully deserved, I think. I will say one thing for him: he's been honest in his explanations for things, and he was quoted in the
Transparent.
He has been, and he was quoted in the Ottawa Citizen, which is the major newspaper in Ottawa, when he was asked about the venue that they picked, the Aberdeen Pavilion. He said that they picked it because of its size. He said selling an arena would be hard to do, especially over so many nights. And this is a direct quote. He said, "We wanted to make sure, even by the last night, there was still a good crowd and a good feeling." And so they're hoping that they can get 500 fans a night. I really think, I actually went to school in Ottawa, and I'm familiar with the area. It's going to be in an area called Lansdowne Park, which is a nice part of Ottawa. There's a football field nearby where the CFL team used to play. And maybe they still do, but they used to anyway. And I think getting 500 fans even the first night is going to be very difficult in Ottawa. Very difficult.
It could be.
I think
it could be. Yeah, I'm not as familiar with the area, but I do know it's Ottawa in November.
Well, at least it's not outdoor. If it was outdoor, they'd be in big trouble.
Well, look, did you see how flimsy it looks? It looks flimsy.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the building. I know you guys were joking, I think, on the Raw show, calling it a airplane hangar.
Flimsy, yeah.
But I just think 500 fans a night, especially after... Because they're going to be doing 6 straight nights of tapings between the pay-per-view and the Impact tapings. Very difficult. It's going to be very difficult. And we'll see what happens. I mean, Ottawa is not a hot town for the WWE. I think they do Toronto like every 3 months. I think they hit Ottawa every other time that they do Toronto. Yeah. So it's going to be a real challenge for them. But it makes sense that they'd be doing shows, locally. I showed Sean actually information about the building. I showed you what the rent is, and it's pretty reasonable, right?
Yes.
For a building that size. So I can understand why they'd be doing it. But imagine that that talent.
They need a different looking environment. They need to do something different. And
right.
if it's successful, then more power to them. I also spoke to a couple of guys who have worked for Impact Wrestling in the past. Mr. Anderson, some of you know him as Mr. Kennedy, and Sean Daivari. We spoke about their indie loops. We spoke about their relationships with WWE. Take a look.
there's something to be said about an independent schedule is more grueling, even though you're working less, because TNA and WWE or whatever, when we were working for either one of them, they kind of plotted out for you. Whereas like, I remember in 2011 or maybe, I don't know, one time I did 22 days on the road straight doing independent. So I went to Japan for 2 weeks. I came home to do some indies, and then I went to Europe for like a week and a half. And I remember I'd done like 18 days with WWE before, but this is, just 4 days longer than that. But it was so taxing and so grueling not having WWE loop goes like this, and then you fly home. Or TNA loop would go like this, and then you fly home. This was like Asia, United States, South, Texas, where I live, to catch a connection to the East Coast, to go to the West Coast, to fly to Europe. It was like, after 21 days, I felt like I'd been on the road for 3 months. It was so taxing.
Sean, what's your contract status like right now? When I talked to you last year, you were still with Lucha Underground, but I feel like you worked that one match in January. But due to their filming and broadcast schedule, it's always kind of tough to tell who's still there or not.
Yeah, I asked for my release last year when I was supposed to do a program with the guys. He wrestles Ezekiel Jackson in WWE, and then we set up at the end of season 1 to have a program in season 2, and then in between season 1 and season 2, he quit. So it was just kind of like I showed up and I was like, "What's going on?" And like, "Well, Zeke quit, so we have nothing for you." I was like, "Oh, okay." And at TNA, not TNA, Lucha Underground, it's not like WWE or TNA where they guarantee you money. They guarantee you seasons, and then you get paid per appearance. So all of season 2, I literally was sitting on the shelf, and they're like, finally like, "Okay, for the season finale, we'll have you come in. We're gonna start an angle with you and Paul London to go into season 3." I was like, "Okay, cool." Me and Paul had a match. I was really happy with the match and everything. And then I'm sitting at home like 3 months later watching the season finale, and the match got cut. And I messaged one of the writers and said, "Hey, what's going on? Like, I just watched the show and you cut me and Paul's match." Like, "Yeah, we decided to go with a different direction with Paul. We're not going to do that." And I'm like, "Fuck, am I going to sit home for all of season 3 again too?" And then, I just messaged him. I said, "Look, it's not heat or nothing, but can I have a release for my contract? If you guys decide something for me, I'm available. Like, WWE's not calling me, TNA's not calling me, but let's just not have me locked up with you guys. And if nobody calls, which probably will happen, if you guys do want to figure me in a season 3, just call me back." And it was kind of very amicable, like, yeah, because I was signed up through 6 seasons. They said if season 2 gets picked up, then you're locked in through season 6. This is at the end of season 1. So season 2 did get picked up, and so I was locked in through 6. And I said, "Hey, whenever you want, call me. I'm no heat, no problem. I'd be happy to come back if you ever need me." Fortunately, they're doing so well, they haven't needed me. So I just kind of chilled, and I'm not expecting a phone call from them back, but I really do feel like everybody says it's always amicable, but this one actually feels like it for the first time. Even I say it all the time. I know, like, when I didn't re-sign with WWE, I said it was amicable, but I think they were kind of like, "Who the fuck are you?" type thing. But I really feel like this Lucha Underground one they were okay with it, and they understood as well. Because they didn't have to. They could have said no. They said no to a lot of people that asked for releases. But they said, "Yeah, we get that."
How are your relationships each with WWE? I mean, Sean, I know that your brother's there, obviously. So
I think they're both as healthy as you can be for people from the outside looking in.
Have you spoken to them, or they vice versa, about the school, or maybe any recommendations or fishing for talent?
I just went to the NXT show and talked to Matt Bloom, talked to Shawn Michaels for a couple hours, and it's not a business relationship at this point. It's just a friendly relationship. There's no heat or anything like that, as far as I know.
Yeah, myself, I haven't had any. I had conversations with Triple H when I was done with Ring of Honor in like 2011, and then I really just haven't had any conversations with my brother. Started working there, and then the last 2 times he was in town, I went down and had a really small like powwow with Vince, just me, my brother, Vince, and the head writer of SmackDown, and nothing came of it. But I think regarding me and Ken, I think they always kind of have their ideas of who out there is available if they want to, just kind of like we saw with Shelton. Like, for the longest time, they knew Shelton was available, and it's one of those things where if you're going to hang in the balance, I don't think they mind grabbing you and just saying, like, let's see if this guy will pan out. But if you're someone like Shelton or Ken or, myself, for example, I think they'd be like, if we have something specifically for Ken, we know we can call Ken. And like Shelton, like they could have signed Shelton and benched him, but they just said, why? Let's just let him earn a living wherever he wants. And then when we have something specific for him, we'll give him a call. And if he's available, we'll make something happen.
Is it back?
So Daivari and Ken Anderson running their own school now seems to be doing well. I saw a virtual tour of the facility, and it's a really awesome looking facility. So I encourage people to check that out. You guys will be hearing more from them moving forward. They would be hearing from Ring of Honor's Punishment Martinez, but unfortunately the 4-segment interview did not record properly. But I had a great conversation with Punishment Martinez recently as well. We will have live coverage of Death Before Dishonor that he's wrestling on this Friday, and I still got enough to get a couple good stories out of that too. So
did you
be
tell
on the
him,
lookout for that, guys.
Did you tell him it didn't record?
No. Are you kidding me? Have you seen him? If you saw him, if you saw him, you would be like, yeah, I probably see why not.
I will say one
I got
thing.
enough content to make the interview worth it. It's okay.
Yeah. I'll say one thing about Sean Daivari. I really appreciate his honesty, because how many times have we seen interviews with guys that are not in WWE because WWE's not interested, but they make like, fuck WWE, I could work there if I wanted to, and I don't want to deal with the politics, and I don't want to deal with this and that. When in reality,
Road Dogg Billy Gunn when they got fired.
There you go. And in reality, they would come running in a second. Sean Daivari had the balls to be honest and say, you know what, they haven't called me. I'm available. They haven't called me. And I appreciate that, because you can see right through the bullshit when these guys, say otherwise. So,
yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about the Jinder Mahal promo. And I really want to hear what a guy like Nigel that's not a wrestling fan, I'd love to hear his opinion on what happened. So, Nigel, quick little recap. Jinder Mahal, a Canadian who's portraying an Indian. I mean, he is Indian descent, but he's portraying a, from India Indian. And his character is that he claims that American fans are prejudiced and they hate him because of who he is and because of his background. And so he's a bad guy for that reason, right? And that's been his spiel for months. And he does these anti-American promos, and that's kind of how it's been. Last night on SmackDown, we're taping this on September 20th. So last night on SmackDown, he did a promo about Shinsuke Nakamura, who's a Japanese wrestler that he's going to be wrestling at Hell in a Cell, whenever that is, Sean, next month.
Yes.
And during this promo, and I want to make sure that I get a couple of these right, so I actually wrote them down. During this promo, he said a few things about Shinsuke and about the Japanese. He said, "Fine people of Japan feast on feline and dine on dolphin." He said, "Shinsuke, you always rook the same." He also claimed that the American people refer to Shinsuke as Mr. Miyagi.
Okay.
And then what kind of made it even worse is that he went on to accuse Americans of prejudice after he just got through, several minutes of prejudice himself. He accused Americans of prejudice, and he said they'll turn on Shinsuke just as they turned on Jinder. Now, we've talked about this kind of content before, Sean. I'm not offended by it, and I'm not insulted by it because it's pro wrestling, and because Vince McMahon has done a lot of crazy shit over the last 30 years, and so you almost come to expect it. The one thing I will say, though, is do they think that Jinder's getting good heat doing that, especially given the times and given everything that's been happening with all the protests and the fights and all the movements and everything? Do they think he's getting good heat? Do they think people are going to pay money to see Shinsuke Nakamura beat him up at Hell in a Cell? Because that's what a good heel is supposed to be. I think it's really foolish that they're going down this road. And you saw the attendance, right, for the second week in a row. So Nigel, last week they were in Vegas for SmackDown. And somebody took a picture of Ronda Rousey, who was at ringside. You could see the side of the arena behind her, and it was empty. Last night they were in Oakland, California. Wade Keller, I guess, was at the show, posted a photo during the show, and again, one side of the arena was completely empty, and they moved those fans to the other side so that it looked full for television. Things aren't working out, man. I don't think they're working with Jinder. I don't think they're working with this storyline. Sean, what did you think, first off? And then I'd love to hear... Nigel's mic isn't working, so you can't go on a long rant, but I'd love to know what Nigel, as a non-wrestling fan, thinks about this nonsense.
Well, regardless of what I think, I know that that's what they think because I talked to a couple people in WWE today. Also, they said that Vince McMahon is getting a little more, ironically, saying liberal with what gets on his TV. We saw him bleed last week. We saw this week. We've seen a lot of it. He's open to pushing the envelope a little more. They think this is the right kind of heat. It's not.
No.
Nobody's showing up.
No.
Nobody's showing up, man. And I said this last night, like, I was waiting for all the comments, the liberal cuckflake and all that crap. I didn't really get any of that. Everybody was pretty I don't want to say everybody. I don't want to generalize. By and large, everybody pretty much said, yeah, that was a little much. Like, even beyond it not offending me, it just wasn't good.
I agree.
And there were, I've got Asian people on my timeline, on my Twitter timeline. They were like, yeah, I was offended because I do experience this every day in my life. So that kind of sucked. And like I said, like, he's not Muhammad Hassan, and he's never gonna be Muhammad Hassan. That was how this gimmick would have worked in the Muslim character 12 years ago. And like I said last night, I'm fine with that type of gimmick because I wrote 6,000 damn words on the thing. Like, it could have worked back then. It ain't working with him. It's just not working with him. And now what they're doing is they're compromising the integrity of their guaranteed market to try to break into another one that they think is going to be, like, huge. And
I agree with that. I agree with that.
I don't know what it's doing, but they're sacrificing the integrity of what they have on their show right now. It's the same thing that TNA did for a couple of years with that Mahabali Shera bullshit.
Right.
When I had people in TNA saying Mahabali Shera sucks and he will never get it, and said at least Jinder Mahal is committed. And then I see the guy mess up his finish on a WWE pay-per-view. And I'm like, well, does he? Does he get it?
I mean, honestly, that finish, you've talked about that. I'm not bothered by that finish too much. What does bother me, though, is that Jinder now, in theory, has enough stroke as the WWE champion that you would think he would want to have some creative input. And I know that he said, I think on Jericho's podcast, or maybe it was in an article somewhere, he claimed he had creative input. There's no fucking way. There is no way that what he said on SmackDown was his own creative thinking.
And if it was, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah. I think he said what he was told to say, and that's why we were able to get his Punjabi promo. He did like 25 seconds in Punjabi. We were able to get it transcribed because in English last night he said, "If you think what I just said went too far, wait until you hear what I say in Punjabi." So I got it transcribed, and as it turned out, it was mild, and I think it was mild because that was really Jinder, right? Because he knew the guys in the back don't understand Punjabi. Vince McMahon sure as hell doesn't understand Punjabi. So he didn't have to go push the envelope because nobody was going to know any different. I agree. And it's funny because when Jinder was on Jericho's podcast talking about how you become a star in India, he said being on the roster is not enough. You have to be at the top of the card. You have to beat top guys. I don't know how they think that they're going to win the Indian market by having this guy show blatant prejudice against a Japanese wrestler. How is that somebody that they're going to want to get behind? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me at all. And I feel for Jinder, man, because
I do too.
This whole run has done nothing for him, and it's not his fault.
Well, it's done a little bit for him.
No, but what I'm saying is it's done nothing to solidify him as a wrestler. And when he loses the title, which he will sooner than later, what's going to happen to him? Right? Maybe he'll get a couple of rematches.
They're going to India in December.
Yeah.
And they haven't posted. They made the conscious decision to not post that promo on YouTube.
Right. The whole thing was a bad idea.
I feel bad that he's getting his big break now.
Yeah.
And this is the stuff he's forced to do. And maybe he doesn't feel like he has enough stroke to say, no, I'm not doing this. He's got to step up.
I agree.
He's got to say something. He's got to be like, this is lame. This is really lame. And that's how I always thought that the catalyst of a Singh Brothers babyface turn would happen, is them going off on TV and saying, you're misrepresenting our people.
Right.
Cut the shit out.
And you know what? I understand it takes time to get comfortable, too. I mean, John Cena wasn't changing things up his first year in. Bret Hart wasn't changing things up his first year in as far as being a top guy. It takes time to get comfortable. And this is why I always shit on Roman Reigns, because Roman Reigns has now been a main eventer for 3 years, and he's still not having as much input as he should have. And Jinder, I really wish that he would have the balls, I guess, to tell Vince, I don't think that's the way to go. but he's doing what he's told. This morning, a woman named Marissa Payne, who's a sports writer with the Washington Post, she noted on Twitter that she's doing a story about racist promos, and she was looking to talk to anyone that attended the SmackDown taping in Oakland. So, and how is that going to be positive press for WWE when that comes out? You know. So Nigel, what do you think? Hearing about this Canadian guy portraying an Indian, doesn't like Americans because they're supposedly prejudiced. Now he's blatantly prejudiced against a Japanese wrestler. How does that make sense?
Just sounds like a mixed bag of bad decisions, honestly. And,
that's what it is.
And honestly, like, it just... I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah. I agree. And you know, the other thing I was thinking too, so when this segment wrapped up, what do? They go to a backstage segment with Shinsuke. Right? Yeah. Shinsuke, if he's there, how is he not running out?
And kicking everybody's ass.
Yeah, like how are you making him look good? They literally buried everybody with that whole thing because they made Jinder look like a jackass and they made Shinsuke look like a coward for not running out. So it's doing nobody any favors. And again,
interesting note: out of 132 title reigns, WWE title reigns, by the time Hell in a Cell rolls around, Jinder Mahal will be at about the 32nd longest out of those 132. So he's had a pretty extended reign already, and if it lasts until December when the India tour is, right. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, you know what? Speaking of somebody that should try to utilize a little bit of creative input, what about Mr. Dolph Ziggler? So I got to tell you, man, I watched that segment on SmackDown this week. And after he did the first, because what is this, the second or third week in a row that he's mocked these entrances? Third week in a row. So after the first week, I'd had enough of it, right? It was done. Then he goes and he does it again a second week. Now he goes and does it a third week. What are they trying to accomplish with this? I know you think it's going to lead to a feud with Bobby Roode and that he's going to do the glorious entrance and all that. How are they putting any heat on Dolph again so that you're going to want to buy a ticket to see him get beat up? It's so repetitive. It's painful to watch. And I know Anna said this on the Post SmackDown podcast. How ironic that one of those entrances that he mocked was Shawn Michaels, when our biggest criticism, or at least my biggest criticism of Dolph Ziggler over the last year, is that he's kind of called it in the sense that he's become Shawn Michaels. Not only did he change his gear, and not only did he start using the super kick as his finisher, but he started tuning up the band like Shawn Michaels. And now he's mocking his entrance as part of his little character. I don't understand how they think this is going to get him over at all. Like, how is this doing anything for Dolph Ziggler?
Those entrances do pretty decent YouTube numbers, at least comparatively speaking to others. So that on that show. So I mean, I guess there's that. But to me, I'm just like, damn, wish SmackDown would end every time that. I tweeted. I said, I wish I had to take a shit right now when that happened. Like.
You know what's funny about this is, since you're on your shit theme this week, when we get to stupid people, I have a shit story. So we're going to let that theme continue. But is Road Dogg still heading up SmackDown?
Yep.
He is?
Yep.
Okay.
And something that he said, let me point it out. I saw a funny tweet, and, you know, I respect Road Dogg and Justin LaBar. I like Justin LaBar a lot, but they were talking about why numbers and stuff were down, and Road Dogg was like, oh, well, traditionally September is bad for sports entertainment, and then one was like, yeah, with new shows and school starting and all that stuff. I'm like, cut the excuses, man. Put on a good show.
I agree.
Cut the shit. Put on a good show.
I agree.
Like, in the whole time that we've done this website, Jimmy, like, the only thing that you've really pointed at, like, okay, maybe a dip after WrestleMania. That's it. I don't give a shit if it's September or January. Right. I want my numbers up.
Right.
I'll do what it takes to put on entertaining content and keep my numbers up. I don't give a damn if there's a Friends reunion on. I don't care if somebody's going to school. I don't give a shit. I want my numbers up. I want to do good. I don't toss in a towel. I'm not like, oh, you know what, 205
Journalism 101, Nigel. What do you think, bud?
Yeah. 205 Live's on tonight. We better mail it in. Enzo's cutting a promo. No, I don't care.
You know what? I will say this. It'd be very easy for a guy like Road Dogg to say, well, we're handicapped because all the good talent's on Raw, right? It'd be easy to say that. But at the same time, they got Shinsuke Nakamura, they got Kevin Owens, they got AJ Styles. Granted, it's not Road Dogg's fault that Vince McMahon wants Jinder Mahal to be the WWE champion. Okay. And it's not Road Dogg's fault that Randy Orton's been calling it in for about 7 years.
Imagine if Kevin Owens just came out. He's somehow out of this situation. Kevin Owens is going to be more over than he's ever been when this is all said and done.
Yep.
And whatever he is, he's the one that beats Jinder Mahal.
Right.
He's going to be huge.
Be great.
He would be huge.
Yep.
That would be the only, like, I mean, he has a real chance to be special when a guy like Edge sees that and he says the post headbutt Kevin Owens has the opportunity to be one of the biggest things in WWE.
Right.
I believe it because Edge is a guy who saw his peaks and valleys and would always change his character up accordingly.
Right.
Like he came back in his hometown and got booed and he immediately went backstage and said, "Turn me heel."
Right, and last week I think Owens was in 3 or 4 segments on SmackDown. I realized I can't do that every week because he's a heel, and right now he's not a main event heel as far as his position.
Yeah.
But he's the best thing on that show. And
yeah, without doubt.
Last week with him in 3 or 4 segments, it was a more entertaining show than what they typically deliver and what they delivered this week. So I don't know, man.
I did enjoy Baron Corbin last night though, because every Tuesday I bust his balls about how Renee Young will come up and go, "What are your feelings on the attack by AJ Styles?" And he goes, "What are my feelings?" So what he did was cut off Renee Young and go, "What? What do you want to know? You want to know how I feel?" And then he re-asked the question to himself that he cut her off and asked. And I was like, "You son of a bitch. You son of a bitch."
Good for Baron Corbin. You know he's one of my favorites. I hope they push him in the main events on a weekly basis. Let's go, stupid people, Nigel.
All right.
This is a stupid song, it just goes on and on. You might find some meaning, but you would be wrong.
So first and foremost, I have a disclaimer from last week, Sean.
Oh, yeah?
And when you know that I have to have a guy producing that works on a conspiracy theory website, a political website, he was able to catch this. So last week I told a story about a guy that tried to marry his computer. As it turned out, even though, yeah, I guess he still is a stupid person, but as it turned out, he was doing that for political reasons because he is a anti-same-sex marriage activist, and he was doing that to prove a point. So Nigel pointed it out, and I think you showed me a video clip on YouTube that had this guy talking about this kind of stuff, and that's all it is. It's a political movement that he's doing. So little disclaimer on that one. We're starting to get submissions by readers and by listeners for this segment, and I got a couple of good ones this week. And again, I try to stick with the theme, with the content you like. I try to keep it going. Toilet humor, that's Sean Ross Sapp's thing.
My forte.
So
I threatened to put in people's address to poopsenders.com if they said that Roman Reigns was a babyface. So yeah.
Okay, so the first one was submitted by listener Mike Lacera via Twitter. It was reported by Fox 11 in Los Angeles that a gym in Worms, Germany, and it's ironic that the town is called Worms when this is a penis story, Sean.
Oh.
A gym in Worms, Germany.
Goody gumdrops.
A gym in Worms, Germany had to call firefighters to help free a man who got his penis stuck in the hole of a 5.5-pound dumbbell plate.
Yes.
Yeah. It took a grinder, a hydraulic saw, and 3 hours to get the man free. So
we know why Ellsworth wasn't on SmackDown this week.
Yeah, he was in Worms, Germany for some reason. Yeah.
Yeah.
This next one was reported by a wonderful publication called the Southeast Missourian on September 17th, and there's a funny little ending to this, which is the reason I kind of put it in here. So 34-year-old Kevin Coomer from a place called Burfordville, Missouri, was jailed on charges of second-degree burglary and second-degree arson after posting photos on Facebook of himself standing in front of a burning bar and grill in Delta, Missouri called Jax, J-A-X, presumably no relation to Nia Jax. He included the caption, "Burn in hell, Jax Bar."
And he posted this
on Facebook. He posted a photo.
Man.
So he was taking a selfie in front of the burning bar with the caption, "Burn in hell, Jax Bar."
He's got to have mental problems. Like, that's got to be like some sort of either that or maybe he spent a long time in prison and he just doesn't like the way the world is on the outside and he's trying to go back.
Maybe, but I couldn't help but think of a wrestling storyline, like Vince McMahon yelling, burn in Jack's, or burn in hell, Jack's bar.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, that was a good one. This last one was submitted by a listener named William Ortiz via Twitter. I know you've seen this one. This one went pretty viral. According to CBS Channel 4 in Denver, police are searching for a woman who has been seen repeatedly defecating in a neighborhood while out running. A witness says the runner is doing it in her neighborhood at least once a week for the last 7 weeks, and so they've nicknamed her the Mad Pooper. The Colorado Springs Police Department has gotten involved and say the runner could face charges of indecent exposure and public defecation.
Talk about having the runs. Am I right?
Ba-bum-bum. That was good, man. That was good.
Like, I mean, hold on. Again, gotta be a mental issue. We had a person here in Kentucky, at the University of Kentucky, a serial foot stabber.
Really?
He would crawl underneath UK library desks and stab people in the foot.
Really?
They never caught him.
And now he's the managing editor of Fightful.com?
I would never stab somebody's feet. But I'm more likely to poop in somebody's yard and then run. But the Mad Pooper, like, come on, like, you got a DNA sample. If this were an episode of CSI, they'd have this shit knocked out literally in an hour. That's actually a good point. They have the DNA. You're right. Like, Gil Grissom needs to be on the case. I don't know what the holdup is here. But, like, it can't be that hard, because I get the feeling that if somebody is going yard to yard taking dumps, they've probably been booked before in jail.
You think so? You think they want to get caught too, right? They probably want to get caught, right?
I don't know. I saw the thumbnail. Like, I think there's maybe a video out there.
I saw a photo of it. I saw she's wearing like typical like joggers clothing, like shorts and a t-shirt and the whole deal. So. I don't know.
Did I ever tell you the school story about the guy who broke in and took a dump?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, like situations like that, I'm like, do you bring toilet paper with you? That's my thing.
That was an impulse.
But I mean this.
Is
she bringing like wet naps or like wet wipes or toilet paper or a napkin or a handkerchief? Something. Is she bringing it with her, or is she just running around, in this case, with duty butt? Is she just running around like that?
I think that you should call the Colorado Springs Police Department and ask them if they've gotten any kind of evidence like that.
Do you think Joe Kenda is on this case? Do you know who Joe Kenda is?
I have no idea.
It's a show called Homicide Hunter on like Investigation Discovery, and he solved like 400 murders in Colorado Springs.
Really?
I'm shocked that there have been 400 murders in Colorado Springs, but you know what? Forget Gil Grissom. Get Joe Kenda on this Mad Pooper case.
There you go. I will leave that with you. And I forgot to mention at the top of the Stupid People segment, thanks to Trevor Strong. Go to trevorstrong.org to check out his song, The Stupid Song. So there you go. Shayna Baszler. What do you know?
WWE. She's heading there right now.
No NXT?
Florida.
Oh, so is she going to do NXT, or do you not know?
Yeah, from what I understand. Well, I just know that she's relocating right now.
Okay.
She's relocating right now. She's literally driving across the country, so.
Okay.
That's it. Also, Paige at the Performance Center, at her, like, urging. Like, they were, like, I know that a lot of people were kind of just, like, surprised that she was even coming back, but she's like, I'm ready to wrestle, I want to wrestle, type of thing. Like, I think many in WWE were just cool with her writing out her deal and getting her downside, but she wants to wrestle. So WWE has softened their stance, from what I've been told, like, significantly over the past week and a half, 2 weeks, but they don't know what brand she's going to be on. They still aren't sure yet, and I think you got to put her on SmackDown.
Absolutely. SmackDown.
You got to put her on SmackDown.
Yeah. Now, I kind of question if she's coming back because she wants to raise her public brand prior to leaving the company, because it'll help her out outside the company, potentially.
She's got a movie to push, too.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I can see that.
Now here's the thing. How do you do that movie without including the horrible things that happened to her earlier this year, the photo leaks.
They'll end it they won't even get to that point. They'll probably end it when she won the title from AJ.
Probably, yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, so they're not even going to address any of that stuff. Sean, do you remember the Wrestle Vessel?
I've heard of it, yeah.
So I'm gonna tell you a few little details that I probably shouldn't. Years ago, WWE used to do this thing called the Wrestle Vessel. And it was basically on a cruise ship, and all of the talent would be on it. And I think it was for like a week. And you could pay money to essentially go on the cruise with them. And this was in the late '90s period. Shawn Michaels, I think, was the champion at that time, and he was, he had the attitude that he had at the time. And Sunny was at her peak at the time. I heard a lot of stories. I knew people that went on the Wrestle Vessel at that time. Let's just say I heard a lot of stories about certain married wrestlers that were openly having trysts on the cruise. And I heard certain stories about certain valets that also had a pretty good time on the cruise. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because, for whatever reason, Chris Jericho has announced that he's going to be doing something called Chris Jericho's Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea, which is going to be a 5-day cruise. And the thing that's kind of strange about it, it's a 5-day cruise taking place October 27 to 31st, 2018.
Yeah.
Over a year from now, Sean.
You got a plan for a cruise, man.
For a year? Is that necessary?
It's a little much.
Now it's going to be.
They also had the WCW Bruise Cruise back in the day. Do you remember that?
Remember that one too? I remember that one too. Yeah. Now this is going from Miami to the Bahamas. It's scheduled to feature. This is what's interesting about it. And I was going to ask you because I don't keep tabs on stuff like this. When does Chris Jericho's WWE contract end? Do you have any idea? Is he still on 3-month cycles?
It's tough to say when his contract ends because he comes back and he leaves, and he comes back and he leaves. But, right. I mean, he'll be clear to do this. I don't think he'll be wrestling on the show, but, of course, it's over a year from now.
I don't think he'll wrestle on the show, but clearly he likely cannot be affiliated with WWE when they're going to be doing something called a Sea of Honor tournament hosted by Ring of Honor.
I don't know. Maybe he could. I think he pretty much has free reign to do whatever the hell he wants outside of WWE in that regard. I don't think he could go wrestle for Ring of Honor.
No, he won't. He won't.
Like, I mean, Rob Van Dam can't go wrestle for Ring of Honor. Like, WWE kind of has him sort of on a bit of a retainer type of thing.
Right.
Like, to just, and with an open door to come back. But,
right. Well,
yeah, I saw some of the guests, and I was like, oh, that could be interesting.
But some of these guys, are they not on Legends deals? Jim Ross, Diamond Dallas Page, Mick Foley, Ricky Steamboat. Are they not on Legends contracts, these guys?
Yeah, but they can still do stuff like that. They can
I'm surprised, unless WWE's not aware of it, which is possible. I'm surprised that they would allow them to be affiliated with the cruise that's going to have a Ring of Honor tournament on it. Even though I realize that relations are pretty decent with Ring of Honor, and they've used Ring of Honor footage on the network before, so I guess it's at all possible. If anybody is interested in going on the Chris Jericho's Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea, Nigel, I know you are. Oh, yeah. If anybody else is interested, go to ChrisJerichoCruise.com and you can book your tickets.
I do not like open sea, and my maximum on vacation is about 2.5 to 3 days. So 5 days at sea sounds like misery.
They make stops, Sean.
Doesn't matter. It sounds like misery.
Can you swim?
Yeah. I swam Thursday, Friday night.
Oh, that's good. Like in like a kiddie pool or like in the ocean? I have to ask the question, Nigel. I have to ask the question.
What's next on your list, Jimmy?
So I guess we should talk about No Mercy.
Should we?
No Mercy is this Sunday, and let's talk quickly about who your picks are. So the main event for the Universal title: Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman. Who you got?
Based on the guy running the ship, I'm going to say Brock Lesnar. But if it were me, I'd pull this trigger on Braun Strowman right now. I would make him Hulk fucking Hogan. Is what I would do.
So here's my question for you. I think Brock is going to retain the title. I don't think Brock is going to get a clean win over Braun Strowman. So my question for you is, how do you think the finish is going to play out?
There's no way this can be a DQ match, or else or anything but a no DQ match, or else it'll be bad. because Braun needs to be able to tear stuff up. That's Braun Strowman. That's him. Maybe a count out or something. I don't know. I just really, really think it is the time to put Braun Strowman over Brock Lesnar. I think right now is the time.
I agree. I mean, you look at the Goldberg situation in WCW. Similar run to Braun. I mean, his was even better. I mean, Braun, had some setbacks with Roman Reigns. Goldberg had no setbacks. But,
I said on Monday's show they should bring Goldberg back for Survivor Series and have Braun beat him in 30 seconds.
It's not a bad idea.
The way that Lesnar got beat in 30, or like that last year. Just throw him some money, because that's a hell of a way to put Braun Strowman over. Have him beat Lesnar, then have him beat the only other guy to beat Lesnar recently in Goldberg. I think that would be a really good idea.
That's not a bad idea.
You know Goldberg, he'd be like, I can't do it. Can't do it, my kid.
For $250,000 a shot, he'll do it.
Maybe.
Goldberg will do it. I think they're planning probably a 2 or 3 match series, and I think that there's probably money in Braun chasing for the title. So I think what's going to happen is Braun's going to lose control, maybe power slam through a table, something, and I think he'll get disqualified. That's what I think is going to happen.
Isn't that crazy to think now, as compared to 2 years ago, there's money in Braun Strowman chasing for the title?
Yeah.
Can you believe it?
Remember when he was Adam Rose's lackey?
Yeah, I do.
Unbelievable. That's the same guy. John Cena, Roman Reigns.
It needs to be Reigns.
Agreed. It's got to be Reigns. Women's title: Alexa, Sasha, Nia, Emma, Bayley.
I would have Emma win it and then lose it the next night to Asuka. That's what I would do. I would have her immediately. I would have her win it and then come out, and then Asuka head kicks her like in a week or two or something like that. That's what I would do.
I was going to say, Asuka's not medically cleared, I don't think, yet.
Well, as soon as she's medically cleared, she kicks Emma in the head and wins the title.
That's not a bad idea.
Because Asuka is what they wish Nia Jax was. She has the aura of being unbeatable and a monster and dominant.
Right.
Nia Jax doesn't have that, but you can run Alexa Bliss versus Asuka. You can run anybody against Asuka because she has that perfect transition between babyface and like pseudo babyface heel type of thing.
Yeah, and you know what would be funny about Emma winning? She was an afterthought on Raw. She wasn't even in the segment. Yeah. Like you would think it was a 4-way with the others without her, because
she wasn't there. She was at home in Australia.
Why was she at home?
Because they did an Australian tour and they let her stay home for a couple of days.
They let her stay? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess good for them.
I mean, her gimmick is that she tweets, so having a tweet up there I thought was pretty appropriate for her.
Tag team titles, a match that I just could not care any more less about than I do. Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose against Sheamus and Cesaro.
Yeah,
couldn't care less.
Sorry to spoil things for you if you all are NXT viewers, but I really thought the Authors of Pain were coming up, and I would have had them be the ones to face Rollins and Ambrose, because I look at that division and I'm like, who do I think that they would have trouble beating? But I would have loved Rollins and Ambrose versus the Authors of Pain. Having Ambrose and Rollins take those two big sons of bitches by the hand and saying, let's have a great match. We see what you've done down there. I think Rollins and Ambrose are going to win. I think they need to keep with this. This is the best stuff for them.
Right.
C. Phoenix says they're stale, but they're a lot less stale than they were as singles guys.
Yeah, Ambrose was going nowhere as a single. I think that this is Rollins. I think is better than this. Ambrose, right now, I don't really care. I think Renee Young is the best thing Ambrose has going on right now. Finn Balor versus Bray Wyatt. Boy, what a fun match that's going to be.
Who gives a shit?
I agree. Let's just move on. Cruiserweight title, Neville versus Enzo Amore.
Is Finn Balor's gimmick, like, the Robert Downey thing, like, from Tropic Thunder? Did you ever see that where Robert, he played the black guy?
Yes.
And, like, Finn Balor's thing is that now he's a regular guy. He's a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude. That's him right now. And Bray Wyatt just wants him to be the dude when they face each other.
Right.
I guess that's the situation.
I don't know. It's unfortunate. Ever since Finn came back from injury, it's just been a downward spiral for him. It's unfortunate.
It's been bad. Oh, my God. Anderson and Gallows as baby faces with Finn Balor. Just give it to me already. Anderson and Gallows come out there and call people nerds, and the crowd wait for it, and they want to call people nerds with Anderson and Gallows.
Yeah.
And Balor's out there telling stories about goddamn dragons and shit. I don't care.
They could have Finn Balor out there while Gallows is calling people nerds. They could have Finn Balor playing with Legos in the corner of the ring.
Or
Something like that.
Fonz collar. He ain't a nerd.
So the Cruiserweight title, Neville, Enzo Amore.
I think, well, I'll say who should win. Neville should win, but I think Neville or Enzo should put up like a really big fight. The whole thing with Neville has been that he has been laughing at Enzo this whole time.
Right.
He thinks Enzo is a giant joke.
Right.
So if he escapes like by the skin of his teeth, I think that puts Enzo over big time.
I agree. I think Enzo's going to win it. It almost reminds me of Brock Goldberg the first time when Brock in the Survivor Series match was, mocking and laughing at Goldberg, didn't consider him a threat until he got caught with a spear. I think Neville's probably going to dominate. I think he's going to slip on a banana peel, and Enzo's going to pull it off. And quite frankly, Enzo's been great for the Cruiserweight division, I think,
Yeah.
So, and then last but not least, your favorite wrestler challenging for the Intercontinental title, Jason Jordan against The Miz.
I've really liked Jason Jordan lately. Against Roman Reigns and John Cena, he had some phenomenal matches. I'm sure he'll have a good one with The Miz. I think I don't want to say losing streak, he won on Monday, but, I mean, you look at it, and the only guy he's beaten in the last, month and a half is Bo Dallas or Curtis Axel. That's it. He's been losing to everybody else. It wouldn't shock me to see Jordan win because I think they're going to position Miz as the greatest Intercontinental Champion ever type of thing. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me down the line if Miz not only breaks the reigns, the title reigns record and the cumulative length record, but if they have him actually break the single reign record, and the Cruiserweight Championship can be his thing.
Intercontinental.
I'm gonna go with The Miz, but it wouldn't shock me at all to see Jason Jordan win.
I think Jordan's going to win just because I think they look at it like he was competitive with Reigns, but he's not ready. He was competitive with Cena, but he's not ready. And I think the story is he's not ready for that yet, but he's ready for the Intercontinental title in terms of his positioning. So I think he's going to win, but I think very much like a lot of these other matches, I think it's going to continue. I think that him and Miz will have other matches at other shows. But,
speaking of being ready, you could say that Test and Billy Gunn maybe weren't ready for the pushes they were getting in the WWF in 1999. I spoke to Vince Russo about these rocket ship pushes. Here you go.
I'm sexy. And then I'm your sexy boy. Sexy boy. I'm not the boy.
One of the last big shows before you left was SummerSlam 99. You had the Kiss My Ass match with Billy and The Rock. The Greenwich Street Fight, Test and Shane McMahon. Test and Billy Gunn were a couple of guys who looked like, at that point, right before that, rocket ship. Billy Gunn didn't work out for whatever reason. Shortly thereafter, put back with Road Dogg, rather. Test was a guy, personally, I thought that Survivor Series, I thought that was him winning the title from Triple H. After the wedding and all that stuff, I thought it was going to be him instead of the Big Show. Why do you think those two guys in particular didn't necessarily work out the way that it looked like they wanted?
That's a great question, bro. Bro, I got to tell you, freaking Big Kaz reminds me so much of Test. So much of Test. It's unbelievable. Bro.
Test is extremely underrated. Yeah. An extremely underrated in-ring wrestler, body language, a lot of that stuff. Test was really good.
Bro, we had Test standing Stephanie McMahon up at the altar. That's where we were going with it. If we would have continued to have Test, I think we would have made him a bigger star. I really believe that, because once Triple H married Stephanie, Test was kind of out of the picture. We were going to keep the focus on Test. I think we would have made him a much bigger star. Bro, I got to be honest with you. I can't put my finger on why Billy Gunn was never huge. But, bro, maybe the name has something to do with it. I mean, Billy Gunn. It just doesn't sound like the name of a star. Bro, this guy, and I say this every interview.
Well, you all tried to change it to Mr. Ass for a while.
Well, but Vince, that was Vince. Vince with the ass play. Vince loves that crap, bro. That was all Vince. But, bro, I say this all the time. Billy Gunn was the best athlete I ever worked with, ever. all
He's
around.
still
athlete.
working.
Yeah.
He was working. He worked Hiroshi Tanahashi on the New Japan show a couple weeks ago.
The greatest athlete. And I'm not just talking about wrestling. I'm talking about basketball, rodeo, football. This guy was a great athlete, looked like $1 million. Promos, very underrated, in my opinion. But I don't know what it was, bro. I'd love to talk to him about that and see what he thinks. I don't know, bro. Maybe he thinks it was the way he was booked. But you know, New Age Outlaws were pretty over, but the thing about that was Brian James was so great on the mic that no matter how good Billy was, he wasn't going to be as good as Brian. You know what I mean?
An embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, but bro, the guy had it all. I mean, had it all.
Billy Gunn was a guy that I didn't think got enough credit. He would always add to his repertoire too. Like a lot of guys like that, they could settle for kick, stomp, punch, hit your finish, but he was always adding something to it.
Right.
I mean, he was doing the jackhammer like in 99, 2000, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that name, that them not change? I mean, well, they tried to change it to Mr. Ass, but Billy Gunn, and a lot of people still, they had the Bart connotation. That, and you know the scary thing, Vince, and it's something you alerted me of. Bart's bigger than Billy right now. Physically.
Oh, Bart's ridiculous. Ridiculous, bro. Ridiculous. I saw him a couple years ago.
Yeah. People talk about the shape that Billy's in. Bart's even bigger today.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Unbelievable, bro. You know, maybe this had something to do with it. You know, first of all, you know, it was Billy Gunn. So, yeah, you still had the smoking guns. Bro, maybe this had something to do with it. His real name was Kip Sopp. So you're not going to change it to that. Yeah, you know what I mean? You're not going to be, you know, Kip Sopp. I don't know, bro. Maybe it was something in the name, but he definitely had all the tools, man.
I remember reading about him in one of the old black and white, like Pro Wrestling Insider or Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and it said Kip Sopp. And I'm like, what a trash name that is. Who gave him that name?
Exactly.
10-year-old kid, Vince.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
yeah.
Stupid name.
Yeah, you couldn't go with Kip Sopp. Yeah, that wouldn't have worked.
We're back.
Okay. Just want to say, Jimmy, Vince put me over through the entire filming for my great questions. You know.
Yeah, good for you. So
that's how it works. That's how it works. Let's talk about me a little bit more, about how great I am at interviewing people.
So in 2004,
when I turn the recorder on.
Yeah, exactly. When you actually record the interview. In 2004, when I was still running JimmyVan.com, my old site, Test and Matt Bloom had both been released from WWE at that time. Yes. And I interviewed Matt Bloom one week, and then I interviewed Test a week or two later. And you know that in real life they were best friends at the time. Mm-hmm. And Matt Bloom, I couldn't say enough good stuff about him. He was so kind and accommodating. We talked for like 2 hours. After that, for the next year, probably, he would send me emails to say like happy birthday and Merry Christmas, and just a really good guy. When I interviewed Matt Bloom, I dug up a lot of stuff from, you know, that he wasn't expecting, stuff from like college and stuff like that. So then when I interviewed Test, Matt had told Test, you know, be prepared kind of thing. And before we rolled tape, Test said to me, he goes, what kind of, you know, deep dark shit are you going to be bringing up?
Oh,
and I said to him, don't worry, man, I'm not one of those scandalous type of guys. I'm not going to chop you with any bullshit questions. And we ended up talking for quite a while too. I was telling you off the air, that was not long after he got heat because him and Stacy Keibler missed a taping due to a blizzard. And they got a lot of heat, and he was very candid in telling me about it. And he was good to speak to. Tess was a good guy from what I knew of him. And back to the Billy Gunn thing, you and Russo were questioning, how come Billy Gunn never got over as a main eventer? So my opinion, number one, promo work wasn't very good. Number two, my opinion, the fans perceived him as a tag team wrestler. Yeah. And I think that's why he didn't get over. They gave him a shot with The Rock, and if you're not going to get over with The Rock, then you don't deserve to be a top-level single star, right? So that's why I think it didn't happen for him.
Also, we talked about Bart Gunn, who a much larger human than Billy these days. I tried to track him down for that Brawl for All feature that I did, and it didn't seem like he wanted to talk. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was that. But yeah, I remember the Albert and Test releases, because 2004 and 2005 seemed like the first years that WWE just did massive cuts, if you remember. Like
Right.
Gail Kim and Nydia and all these people were getting cut at the same time. And then I remember there was like that period where just everybody was going. Jackie Gaeta, Matt Morgan, Dawn Marie, Kenzo Suzuki, the Dudleys, Maven. Like they're like canning all these people, and it's not like today where they're letting, like, a lot of those guys had a lot of upside. Like, they don't generally fire guys with a ton of upside. They fire guys who eventually, like Juice Robinson, C.J. Parker.
Right.
Who would have known?
Right.
I mean, these days it's usually like a Cody Rhodes saying, you know what, I think I can make things better off outside WWE. So I always was intrigued by that time.
Yeah, I think it was cost cutting at the time.
It was.
They weren't as profitable then as they are now with the rights fees and all that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about independent promoters.
Yeah.
So Chelsea Green, who is Laurel Van Ness in Global Force Wrestling, she posted a tweet.
She's not. Global Force Wrestling is Impact Wrestling now.
Fine, Impact Wrestling. She posted a tweet directed at independent promoters, and she said, "No, you cannot pay me what you think is fair. As you do with all male talent, ask me my price or negotiate, or don't book me." She said an indie promoter offered her $50.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I will say about that, she's right in that the promoter should negotiate. The promoter should be hitting her up, especially if it's the promoter soliciting her, as opposed to her soliciting the promoter. They should definitely be asking her what her price is and trying to negotiate from there. One thing I will say, though, and I know this from experience, $50 can be a good day on the independents. And I couldn't help but think when I read that story, I couldn't help but think of Tony Jones.
Yeah.
Remember Tony Jones?
I do remember Tony Jones, the guy on Beyond the Mat.
Beyond the Mat.
Worked for Roland Alexander, was brought in and was told by Jim Ross, get something a little more flattering upstairs.
And he said Roland never paid him. He said we would do these. He said we would do these Gym War shows and we wouldn't get paid. And Roland Alexander, because promoters are promoters sometimes, Roland Alexander said, "Oh, they're paid well and they're happy." And then Tony Jones was like, they don't pay for those Gym War shows.
Yeah.
I think I told you the story. I don't know if I told the story on the air about when Jim Neidhart wanted to go drive around a town looking for a promoter that canceled the show.
Yeah.
So that's what you oftentimes deal with indie promoters. I remember another occasion when a guy on a show was given $20 for gas, and then they asked him to blade on the show, and they said if he did it, he'd get another $20.
Yes.
That's what you sometimes deal with. So when I saw Chelsea Green's tweet, not a surprise, because you get that a lot. And like I said, $50, depending on the promotion, $50 is a good day. That's just the
$50 is not a good day when you have about over almost 2 years of national television exposure, despite how small it is. They thought she was going to bring people in enough to reach out to her, and like they were going to have to set something up. I mean, like, you don't reach out to somebody that you just don't think is going to fit on your show unless you're desperate. Like, if you're desperate, Chelsea Green ain't the girl you're going to reach out to. Like, I
think they brought her in thinking she was going to be cheap.
Yeah.
Or I think they reached out to her thinking she was going to be cheap.
My commentary booking fee is more than that. Like, that's $50.
Yeah.
$50. Like, so I imagine if they're paying her $50, hotel and trans isn't covered. And I often wonder, like, I even asked Matt Riddle this on our old podcast. I'm like, how do these places afford you, Matt? How do they afford to fly you overseas and put you in a hotel and all that stuff? How do they get a return? And he straight up said a lot of those places will kind of work together to make it easier. That way it's a little bit cheaper all around. That way I'm not getting flown over for one show. I'm getting flown over for like 10 or 11 shows.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I worked with Scott D'Amore in the past when a guy like Jim Duggan was going to come in, but he wanted a full weekend, and I hit up D'Amore. And D'Amore said, well, I'll tell you what, you cover his, whatever it was, you cover his flight and I'll cover half his booking, whatever deal we had made. So that's common. That stuff happens, right?
And I when I wrestle, I usually like to wrestle like charity shows and stuff like that, and I do that for free. And I've been offered money, but I ain't on TV every week. I'm not on Impact
You're
Wrestling.
You're on YouTube, man, like 3-4 days a week.
I wasn't on Tough Enough. $50. Think about this. Say the place is an hour away from where she lives. That's about, probably $10 in gas right off the top because she's probably driving there.
Yeah.
She's got to eat before and after the show. We'll say $7.50 each meal, being super generous, because I get the feeling looking at her, she ain't eating off the dollar menu. She's probably got to eat something that's a little healthier for her. That's $15 before and after the show. That's $25 of the $50 right off the top. Come on, man.
Do you remember Tracy? You remember Tracy Brooks?
Yeah, I remember Tracy Brooks.
So Tracy Brooks, I booked her on shows back in the day. She's another Ontario girl, and I'll never forget the first time that I ever booked her. When it was time for the payoffs, Tracy Brooks was gone, and I said to somebody, she hasn't got her payoff yet, and they said, oh, I think she's just walking to her car, and I was like, go get her. And they went and got her, and she comes in, and I go, you forgot your payoff. She looks at me, and she goes, oh my God, you mean you're an honest promoter?
Oh, wow.
That's what she said. Because I guess it just didn't cross her mind. Maybe she was used to being screwed on small shows. I don't know. But
I mean, you're going to have a lot of people, a lot of dumb people that are saying, well, she's paying her dues. All right, she's been wrestling for 3.5 years. She's young in the business, sure. She trained under Lance Storm. I get the feeling Lance Storm is making sure she's paid her dues.
And I'm sure he's taught her the business end as well.
Hell yeah.
Lance Storm's not stupid. He's not stupid.
My dude, Brian Pillman Jr. went up to train there.
Yeah,
Very happy for
Storm's
him.
a solid guy. He's a solid guy. What do you think of the Dustin Rhodes situation?
So there's a lot to the Dustin Rhodes situation, because there's the Cody Rhodes situation, there's the Starrcade situation. There's a lot to this. With Starrcade coming up, they announced that house show. It's just to sell some tickets, just as Cody Rhodes said.
That's what it is.
I would legitimately work something out where you could run Cody Rhodes and Dustin Rhodes against the Hardy Boys. I would do that in a heartbeat. I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
They should.
Yeah, they won't.
They should, and they should put the match on YouTube or whatever the hell they can to get it out there. If Dustin Rhodes is ever going to be over as Dustin Rhodes, it'll be right now. Because he wasn't ever before. I mean, a little bit in WCW, but not really. But as I pointed out, this was the first time he wrestled as Dustin Rhodes in WWF since January of 1991.
What?
Yes.
No.
He wrestled as Dustin Runnels several times.
Oh.
Not as Dustin Rhodes.
Okay.
Technicalities.
All right. That is a technicality.
Yes.
About
this situation.
When his back was to the camera, it was pretty clear to me he didn't have the face paint on. Because why is he looking at a movie poster or whatever the hell that was on the wall? I question him.
Why wouldn't he be looking at a movie poster?
I suppose. The first thing I questioned is, why are you in the Goldust getup if you're there as Dustin Rhodes? And I still don't know why they gave up on the heel turn with R-Truth. I mean, there was no explanation. They just gave up on it. I think if they had have given that a legitimate shot, meaning with the robe, with the wig, and give him a valet of some sort, if they had have really given that a legitimate shot, he had a chance.
And the tiptoeing the line of the thing. What the thing that, and it's something I brought up when I spoke to my people today. I said, okay, so Vince McMahon's willing to go there with Jinder Mahal. He's willing to go there in promos with Roman Reigns saying bitch and ass and all that stuff, but he wouldn't go there with the new Goldust character. And they just said, well, there was never really any plan to go that far with the Goldust character these days.
Right.
Like they weren't going to push the envelope the way they used to because of the social climate. And I said, the Jinder Mahal thing happened last night.
Right.
It's been happening. So I don't know.
Right.
There's a lot of odd stuff there.
Now, I saw that Dustin posted on Twitter after he lost to Bray Wyatt again. He said something like, we'll meet again on Twitter. Where can they go now? I mean, he's just got beat twice by Bray Wyatt. Clean.
It'll be Dustin Runnels.
Can you imagine? Is that what they're going to do?
Black Rain.
Right. Who was the guy that floated?
7.
Was that 7?
7.
Okay. Maybe that's what they're going to do. I don't know.
Funny.
Last thing on my list, I want to give a shout out to Ric Flair right here. I saw a clip on People TV today. He is on the mend. He says he'll never drink again. He says that Charlotte was told to say her goodbyes because they didn't think he was going to make it. And he's hoping to turn this into a motivational speaking kind of gig or side career. Good for him, man. He was looking a little rough. He was looking like he's a little beat up from everything that happened, as you would expect. But glad that he pulled through, and the guy can still talk. He can still talk as good as he ever did.
He looks like he aged, as we talked about off air. This situation aged him, and
it was a rough situation.
It was a very rough situation, and thankfully he made it out, and thankfully he sees how serious the situation was, and I hope for the best for him. We have an article on that up on Fightful.com. Also worth checking out, guys. Brandon Howard wrote an article called "Wrestling is More Political Than Politics" about the Jinder Mahal situation. I have my notes, match ratings, things like that for SmackDown and Raw up on the site. I'll have them up for No Mercy as well. I give an out of 10 rating, stuff like that. Also tonight, a feature from Carlos Toro, where did Triple G and Canelo go from here? I believe the newsletter will be up tomorrow morning. And as always, Fightful.com, I counted it up. We've had over like 100, 150 interviews in our first, since 2016, an insane number. Go check those out. Mm-hmm. Use the forums. All you got to do is start a forum topic and head over to our contest thing, and you can be entered to win that action figure, that Ric Flair's Defining Moments figure. But we got a big, big weekend coming up. And also, throughout the week, we always update confirmed contract expiration dates and our injury report. The only place you can find that online is Fightful.com.
And if you like that thing with Rusev on SmackDown when I can't remember who it was, might have been Renee Young, that said he was elated, and he yells out, "What does that mean?" You remember
yes.
that? If you like that,
phenomenal.
If you like that, go back and look up a clip from the Slammy Awards when Vince McMahon was doing an award. It might have been months. No, it was McMahon, and Nikolai Volkov thought he won. Go back and look up that clip. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I vaguely remember it.
Okay, go look it up, because when I saw Rusev's thing, that's the first thing I thought of. Look up when Nikolai Volkov thought he won a Slammy.
Did you ever hear Bruce Pritchard's story about how everybody, like Vince and Owen and everybody, like when they spilled the drink on Vader at the Slammies, it was a rib on Vader and he didn't know?
I can see that.
Yeah. I would love, they should put together like a little Slammies documentary. I can't believe they haven't done that for the network yet. Like there's got to be some interesting stories there.
It was fun back then. The show was good back then, yeah.
That's true. Anything else, Jimmy Van?
That's all I got, man. Looking forward to Braun versus Brock. That'll be a good matchup.
Me too. That's going to be a big show. We got shows all weekend long, Saturday and Sunday night. Make sure you tune in. Leave us a thumbs up. That stuff really helps. Subscribe, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, and of course, visit Fightful.com. I appreciate all of your support. Share our stories, all that good stuff. It really helps as we're still a growing site. But guys, until next time, we are out.